The purpose of this video is just to give you a quick tutorial and some reminders on how to best write FRQ number 3 on the AP test, which is better known as the Supreme Court sort of comparison question. So the bottom line is that College Board requires you to know the 14 cases that are on the screen. These are the only cases that you really need to know, and these would be the only cases that you must know to write FRQ number 3, which is this Supreme Court comparison question. So McCulloch and Lopez are both listed in the pinkish color because they're the cases that we are currently reviewing in class in the federalism unit as we're learning how to write FRQ number 3. The yellow case, Gideon v. Wainwright, is highlighted for no other reason than it's the one that shows up in this example. And it might help to have just a little background on it. This case involves the man pictured in the upper right-hand corner, a guy named Clarence Gideon, who was basically accused and convicted of breaking into a Florida pool hall, place where you shoot pool, breaking into a vending machine and stealing some stuff out of the vending machine. He, in the state of Florida, was denied an attorney because in Florida at the time, you only were provided with an attorney if it was a death penalty case. And obviously, this is a relatively smaller crime, and he was forced to defend himself. He was found guilty, and he was sent to jail. He basically appealed, believing that he had the right to an attorney. The Supreme Court ruled in his favor and basically established that regardless of the crime in which you are accused of committing, that you deserve the right to legal counsel. So that's Gideon v. Wainwright. Just helpful to kind of know as we go through this example. So the way this FRQ works is that you will always be provided one of the 14 that I just showed you on the previous screen. That's what we refer to as the mandatory case. The expectation is that you are an expert on all 14 of those cases. And what you'll be provided with is a chance to compare one of those 14 to a random case that you probably don't know much about and is not from that list. So for example, this was an example style of this type of question. So on AP test day, you'd basically be provided with this little blurb, and this involves information in a case called Betts v. Brady, which is not one of the 14. So the 1942 Supreme Court case of Betts v. Brady centered on Smith Betts, a poor person indicted on burglary charges in Maryland. He had no money to hire a lawyer, so he requested that one be made available to him by the state. The previous case had concluded that defendants had the right to an attorney. However, the judge refused in this instance. Betts pleaded not guilty, was forced to serve as his own counsel, and was found guilty. He held on to his conviction that he was entitled to a lawyer and appealed the case. When it reached the Supreme Court basically was faced with the question of, does refusing a poor person an attorney violate the Constitution? The Supreme Court in this particular circumstance ruled that it did not, that the state could not prevent a defendant from using an attorney, but it was not obligated to provide one. So this is the blurb involving Betts v. Brady. You're not expected to know anything more about this case than what they provide you in this little description. There's always 3 components to this particular type of FRQ. The first is A, identify the constitutional clause that is common to both Betts v. Brady and Gideon v. Wainwright. B, explain how the facts of Betts v. Brady and Gideon v. Wainwright led to similar or different holdings in both cases. So a holding is and I put the word decision there. That's not going to appear on the AP test. It's most likely just going to say holding, but it's basically saying like the outcome, the decision, is it similar or different? Usually it'll just ask you to explain why it's similar or different. This particular one is asking you to say, is it similar or different? And then C is usually an application part, right? That, what could citizens in this particular circumstance do if they disagreed with the Supreme Court's ruling in Betts v. Brady? All right, let's look at the A first. Part A is what part of the Constitution is involved in these cases. So again, it says identify the constitutional clause that is common to both Betts v. Brady and Gideon v. Wainwright. So the best bet in Part A is to begin by actually saying the constitutional clause common to both cases is, and what is it? Now, you would know at the end of the year that the issue and dispute in this particular case is the right to an attorney, which is the Sixth Amendment. So you would write the constitutional clause common to both cases is the Sixth Amendment, right? So that's pretty straightforward. Again, amendments are fair game. It could ask you about other clauses that we reviewed, other parts of the Constitution. What is the part of the Constitution that is being fought over? Be specific. Also, before you roll out of Part A, it's a good idea just to force yourself to explain a bit about the importance of that constitutional clause. Show the reader of the grader of your FRQ that you know what you're talking about. This clause is significant because, right? So you could say something like, in this particular circumstance, the Sixth Amendment is significant because it provides people the right to legal counsel, provides people the right to an attorney. Make sure that you clearly explain what the constitutional clause is about so you get credit for it. It's Part A. Part B is really comparing the two cases. So again, Part B reads, explain how the facts of Betts v. Brady and Gideon v. Wainwright led to similar or different holdings in both cases. So translate it, it's basically saying were the outcomes of the cases similar or different. So start by summarizing the facts of the mandatory case. There's no reason at this point to regurgitate and just repeat what was already written for you there about Betts v. Brady for the time being. Start by actually proving to the reader that you know about this mandatory case that's coming from the list of 14. It's not necessary to provide every little nitty-gritty detail about the case, but like make it clear that you know what you're talking about and you know what Gideon v. Wainwright's about. In Gideon v. Wainwright, this gentleman, Clarence Gideon, was denied the right to an attorney because the state of Florida only provided attorneys in capital cases. Ultimately, the Supreme Court decided that his rights were violated and that he had the right to an attorney. Provide a pretty detailed summary of what you remember about the case. And then conclude by stating if the outcome in the cases was similar or different and why. So in this particular example, you would conclude Part B by saying, therefore, the outcome in Betts v. Brady and Gideon v. Wainwright were different. That's because in Betts v. Brady, the Supreme Court ruled that you did not have the right to an attorney, while in Gideon v. Wainwright, they said that you do have the right to an attorney. Make sure that you make the comparison based on the outcome of the case, not like individual little details. Like this was about a guy named Betts and this was about a guy named like Clarence Gideon. That it's not the details that are different. It's the outcomes that you want to focus on. And then the Part C is usually something application related. It'll ask you to sort of relate something involving the case to something else we talked about during the course of the year. Part A and Part B will almost always be the same. It'll just change out the name of Supreme Court cases. The Part C is what could potentially change. So for this particular example, it says explain what options citizens might have if they disagreed with the ruling in Betts v. Brady. So at the end of the year, you would have a long list of things that you knew citizens could do that would basically be checks on the Supreme Court. This is just ask you to apply it in this particular scenario. So this is a little bit about how to write FRQ number 3. The most important thing is that you become an expert of the 14 cases, so that way you can correctly sort of compare it to the random case that they provide you with.